unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth, a production of Souls and Liberty, brought to you in partnership with MyPillow.com. What's becoming more and more clear as Trump 2.0 starts kicking into high gear is that a snake has wrapped itself around the republic, and the head of that snake is Barack Obama. The handler or the financier or whatever term you want to use for whoever controls him, well, that's anybody's guess. An evil genius, a consortium of evil-minded oligarchs, someone, something else, doesn't really matter, all of the above. The actions are controlled by the snake. It is godless, atheistic communism we were warned about personally by the Queen of Heaven in Fatima, Portugal in 1917, essentially days before the Bolshevik Revolution. At that moment, it was Russia that was the locus of the tyranny. But that was then. This is now. The Queen of Heaven said Russia would spread her errors throughout the world. And what started in Russia did, in fact, spread throughout the world and is now being exposed here in the United States. As an aside, there's kind of a certain irony at work that the communist globalist forces in D.C. that comprise the body of the snake, well, they can't seem to shut their mouths about Russia. Russia is their scapegoat for everything. Trump collusion, election interference, Ukraine being the aggressor as they kept NATO expanding more and more eastward. Meanwhile, the political center of communism today is China, and yet we never hear a peep about them from that DC snake. Russia seems to be employed by them as a kind of deception, in fact, a sort of nothing to see here, folks, type strategy. Obama plants are everywhere in D.C., just as they were during Trump 1.0. The difference this time is they're being gone after. Wounded animals, the hunted, however, are most dangerous because they understand they have everything to lose. It is absolutely do or die. The screams from MAGA land are now for justice, for arrests, prosecutions, and hard, long prison terms. The corruption, the evil, is so vast and so enveloping that we wonder that even a 10-year Trump term would be enough to arrest everyone who needs to be arrested and imprison all of them. And that's imprisoning if they're lucky. The snake, a boa constrictor, is an apt image for Obama and his body of revolutionaries against freedom. And, of course, ultimately God. It slowly wrapped its powerful body around the republic, and once it got into position, began tightening and tightening, crushing, squeezing the life force from the nation through a multitude of muscles, each one of those muscles coordinating with all the other muscles, and of course, directed by the head. Now, however, the prey has begun fighting back and has temporarily, at least, largely freed itself from the death vice. But the snake is not about to give up, as we hear throughout all of sacred scripture. Woe to you, earth, for the devil has come down to you in great fury. That's us. This is it. This is until the end of time. This snake has slithered toward this moment for more than a century here in America and was one moment away, one election, couple million votes from the final kill. It will not surrender. It must be killed. Today, we're happy to welcome back Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen Reports, and the chief pollster there. He's like the dude. Mark is like the Rasmussen stud. He's got all the information and everything that he needs to, explore all the lies and the propaganda and everything that comes out of the mouth of the whole deep state, uniparty, communist, bastard, globalist society. I wonder if there's an acronym for that. Mark, welcome. How you doing, brother?
Good to be back. I love the imagery. It's exactly what's going on, and there are so many biblical aspects. We won't know the time or season of Jesus' return, but there are aspects of this that are absolutely biblical. You talked about a few million votes. How about like a few millimeters, right? That's what separated. Yeah. We've been given a gift from God, the amount of clarity and honesty and openness we're now just starting to see. Yeah. And I think what we're starting to see is the beginning of massive change. And I don't know where it's going to go yet, right. But I do know that you can't put this toothpaste back in the tube. Like there's just no, like from now on, we know, hey, it probably wasn't China. It probably wasn't the KGB or Mossad. it was us.
Right.
It was our own government, not like using taxpayer dollars. It wasn't George Soros using taxpayer dollars to oppress us with Marxism as a cloud to cover theft of maybe tens of trillions of dollars in the future of every American. It's absolutely sick. It's perverse and evil. And I don't know what kind of level of accountability we'll see. I think largely public opinion might determine that. But
Yeah.
I mean, there's no predicting where this goes.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I think you got to, sort of stare at is they really don't have. I mean, we've had a couple of really good interviews with Ron Coleman, for example, and Rod, and they both been on time. They don't really have any avenues to go through right now. They can't lock anything down, at least in any sort of official capacity. I mean, Republicans control everything, however narrowly that might be. So they're looking at 2026, and they're trying to obstruct and obscure and come up with all this BS crap in between, and dictator, blah, 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 blah. You saw our commentary a couple days ago on the need to lock down the Catholic, Hispanic, and young, meaning under 40s, vote. And while Trump certainly landslided with the Catholic vote, I mean, those numbers haven't been seen since Ronald Reagan, and before that, Johnson and Kennedy. So I mean, that's how historic that was. But even though he won a majority of the young and the Hispanic vote, boy, did he eat into those margins sufficiently that what you wound up with was him back in the White House. What do you think of the importance of just this first little part of the show? So what do you think about the importance of those three groups, and even the analysis that we did on it?
No, I think it was spot on. It's something that didn't happen rapidly, and it's something that Democrats should have known was going on. Because everybody tracks in the polling industry, tracks the demographics of who voted for whom. And there's some disagreement about what the right answer is, but it's all directionally correct. And we had 18 to 39-year-olds going to Hillary Clinton by 40 points in our polling. We had Trump only getting, high teens of the black vote going back in 2016. Really low numbers. And the Hispanic vote, I don't think it was much better, maybe in the 30s, right?
Yeah.
And we've got a decade of polling on Donald Trump, because after the elections, we'll pick, people to run matchups and start polling right again. So it's been continuous, and I have the charts, and you can just see this upward trend inexorably in all of those groups. And I think COVID had a lot to do with it. And I think Biden being a septuagenarian and barely coherent had a lot to do with it. But it was clown world combined with an oppressive Biden regime that weaponized the government and then also made life unaffordable for people. It was they were getting squeezed from every angle, and that's how you got in our polling. Given the poll, we'd have Hispanic voters tie between Trump and Harris. And what's crazy is after the election now, Hispanic voters approve of Trump more than anybody else. And what's also interesting is that all of those race and gender and age signals are starting to disappear. You going back 10, 20 years, you'd have 65 and older being super conservative and 18 to 39-year-olds being liberal. That's flipped. That is flipped now. Trump approval is 60% with 18 to 39-year-olds. And
wow. Back up on that for a moment. 60%?
Oh, yeah.
Almost 2 out of every 3 people under 40, voters under 40?
Yeah, and this is borne out in all these different questions we've asked. It's been a trend just over the last couple months. But we asked if the quote that Trump said about a golden age beginning now, do you agree or disagree? 59% of 18 to 39-year-olds agreed with that statement. And also more 18 to 39-year-olds than anybody else say the country's on the right track. They're above 50%, 54%.
Wow.
That's massive. Everybody else, it's 42%. So this is fourth turning stuff. This is a complete realignment of people's opinions. And again, I don't know how permanent it is. I don't know. We haven't messed around with party ID since the election. And so the trend might even be bigger. This could be an Elon thing, but it's definitely an anti-government thing. People are very angry. We polled on that. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things I want to ask you. I mean, I think there is, when you look at these three groups, Catholics, young folks, and Hispanic voters, most Catholics are probably a little bit further along on the socioeconomic ladder or whatever, higher rates of education and generally speaking, better paying jobs, maybe not massively better paying, but even in the Trump cabinet and the sort of upper echelon of Trump, there's this like massive Catholic presence, and it's not the Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Dick Durbin, John Kerry, heretical heterodox Catholic thing. This is like the new wave of Catholics who know that all that other crap, that social justice crap, Catholicism that was fed to them all those years is wrong, and are generally trending toward more, as they are in every aspect of their life, conservative, politically, theologically, philosophically, all of that. So you certainly have that. That needs to be held on to and probably expanded for the midterms. And then you move over to the Hispanic and the young folks who probably, where there isn't a Venn diagram with Catholic voters, you do have people who suffered more. Catholics probably suffered kind of philosophically in the whole communism thing and all of that, and the constant anti-Catholicism coming out of Harris's mouth, and it's just nonstop. But you move over to the Hispanic and the younger folks, and they've suffered all that also, but also economically.
Yeah.
So is there what's the strategy, do you think? What's an effective strategy for keeping those three groups not just in the camp, but making even greater headway with all three of them?
Well, here's the thing. It's like, this isn't about traditional politics. The calculus is entirely changed, because for most of the last couple of decades, whether you identified as Republican or Democrat was the biggest tell, right? And what's kind of changed is like, okay, 18 to 39-year-olds are more approving of Trump than older voters, but it isn't by much. Black voters are less approving of Trump, but it isn't by much. Hispanics are more approving, but it isn't by much. Same thing with Protestantism and Catholic. And we've gone into last time about how difficult it is because some of those people that identify as Catholic don't go to church. And some of them go to church a lot, and yet they still identify with the wrong reality set. And so what's been the biggest driver is an ideological test that drives the biggest signal. And when I say that, I say, okay, we ask a question among Catholics and you might get 60-40, where 60 go Trump, 40 go Harris or something like that. But if you look at Biden approval, it's like 95-5. Well, so that is more predictive now than party. And what are some other predictive things? Religion was one, but only in a very specific context. Evangelical Christians went Trump by 35 points in our polls. Atheists went Harris by like 60. So that's almost as predictive as party. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily whether you identify as Catholic or not. And I've seen a lot of Catholics who, are all bought in, and Protestants all bought in, believe the Bible, quote scripture, and yet they'll tell you that Trump is the Antichrist, or they'll put like pronouns in their bios or stuff like that. Yeah. So what it is I think there is a holy war aspect to this, but it's also non-religious. It's this idea of like order and integrity, of doing the right thing that just people don't do. And some people don't have the intellectual rigor to be able to do that, like within the church.
Right.
And I'll give you a perfect example. I've heard Ukraine brought up many times in sermons over the last 3, 4, 5 years, right? Sure. However long it's been going on. 3 years?
3 years, yeah.
And it's always pray for Ukraine. Well, millions of, like hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers are dying too that are Orthodox Christians. Mm-hmm. And this one blew my mind. I heard the Senate chaplain speak, and he told the story about the power of prayer and about how we need to like stand up and pray every day for outcomes. And he said that, well, I'm doing this in the Senate. I have the senators come every day and we have prayer about the Ukraine situation. I get a whole bunch of them, like most of the Senate, apparently. I don't know if I believe that or not. But he said, because of the power of prayer and all the senators coming together, Ukraine has been able to hold out this long. It's the power of God. Well, to me, like my evil flags were going off. I'm like, shouldn't the just outcome have been a peace agreement as rapidly agreed to as possible? You know what I mean? And so there's this blind spot, and I don't know how you fix it. But I think what people are reacting to now is like truth and transparency. That's what they're doing. We pulled on one. Let me try and pull it up about anger, because going into the election, we had only 30% of people trusting the federal government. And so that's way lower than Kamala Harris. So in my opinion, this was a referendum on the regime, the ruling party, the global homo kleptocrat cabal. But how likely is it that some employees of the federal government have engaged in fraud to enrich themselves with taxpayer money? 47% very likely, 23% somewhat. That's 7 in 10.
Wow.
Massive majority. How would you describe your current feelings about amount of waste, fraud, and abuse in federal government spending? Very angry, 45. Somewhat angry, 25%. So if did you have
an option did you have an option on that second question as pissed as hell?
No, not well. We're gonna get there. Should capital punishment be we're gonna get there? But this was our first in a long series of posts about corruption in the federal government. Because I talk to normies, they have no idea how big this is.
No.
The general people tied into politics know now. It's like, it is what we thought it. No, this isn't what we thought it could be. We thought George Soros was pulling the strings. We thought maybe China was bribing all these people. No, it was probably our own FBI using our own taxpayer money, recycled through a web of NGOs, just to maintain the grift. That's so evil. And
it's beyond evil.
I don't know.
I want to go back to a point you just raised, kind of like a holy war thing here, and I know it's not just religion, although it sort of on the upper level above the waterline, you do see that break. Most religious-minded people, Trump, most non-religious, anti-God, whatever, Harris, or that side of the balance, but. These sort of like natural virtues, not supernatural virtues, like the natural virtues, what theologies for a couple thousand years identified as the cardinal virtues. I mean, justice. That's a theme we've hit on here a lot. That you can talk about common sense, which Trump certainly framed it, and that's what it's been. But there's got to be a response to people violating common sense when they're damaging you. And it's what the whole court system exists for. It's what the last day is called Judgment Day for. I mean, there has to be an evening of the playing field, and those who've done bad need to get bad, and those who have done good deserve the good. It's the ultimate definition of justice, giving to each one according to his due. Do you see that as a driver, kind of maybe hidden somewhere in your numbers? Or I'm just curious, because it sure seems like, everybody I talk to is just like, they're pissed when they're seeing the size of the corruption. I don't think anybody out in Normie land thought it was trillions and trillions of dollars. Thought it was just like Nancy Pelosi enriching herself. But what Doge and Elon and Trump have exposed is, it's off the charts.
I think it's going to take a long time to percolate. And I think what we're missing is probably some very, very clear symbol. Because we've heard way worse things since Trump was inaugurated than Politico charging $10,000 a subscription for Political Pro. But Politico took that one in the face. Like USAID was massive, huge grift where everybody in Congress is getting money. But Politico kind of took it on the chin for everybody. And I think that's just the timing and optics. And I think we're going to see maybe something like that spark a bigger debate and storyline. But I don't know. Where do people hear about this kind of thing? They're either following Trump on Truth Social or they're following Elon on Twitter. And it's like there's probably an opportunity for those people to run away from everybody else. It's like the people who are boiling grapefruit peels for hydroxychloroquine during COVID. It's like, well, valid, but nobody gets what you're doing. They're not in the same headspace. And we'll see maybe tomorrow. This is a really good opportunity for Trump to socialize because it's going to be covered by everything. You're going to force it down people's throats.
Right.
And you just have people that
I gotta say that
holy war?
I think that's a massively important address because there's millions of little darts and arrows flying at him. And you're this, you're dictator. Oh, look at you. You were bullied as Zelensky, blah, 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 all that stuff. And yet here's the moment to sort of stand up and say, okay, now I have the microphone, or as our lesbian feminazi friends would say, I have the talking stick. I think it's really important for him. I don't know that there's going to be this continual, oh my gosh, that's the most important address he's ever given. I think to keep the counter-revolution going, every address has to be more important and more significant and more laid out than the one before, because that's what they're doing.
Well, the stakes are getting higher every time, So yeah, I agree 100%. Now, I think, again, there's a lot in the counter-revolution's favor, because the reason that Trump could be successful tomorrow night is because of leadership. And the Democrats, who are currently the overt opposition to the counter-revolution, there's probably opposition within the Republican Party, there's opposition within the deep state. But that's who the people who want opposition are looking to for leadership, and they are. There's articles coming out about how there's a centrist group of Democrats trying to claw the crazies back. And then you have AOC out there, supporting Luigi Mangione as a hero. And so that I don't think is going to be effective. And so I think Trump's biggest barrier is whatever black swan might come up to take the people's eye off the ball. GDP is going to be maybe negative 2.8. But it's okay, well, 1.5% of that is probably all the federal funding that we just cut. But what's it going to do to the economy? I don't know. The mainstream media seems to have lost its power. And so this is really, Trump, they're talking about Trump's visit on Friday. And I won't call that an error, but it was definitely a cycle caused by Trump. And, here we are, though. It's this holy war is a war between reality and people who have created a false reality. I don't think it was always like that. It was something different, but that's what it is now. Just some of these influencers on Twitter are just absolutely insane. I found this guy, Tristan Snell. I don't know much about him, but he's got, 560,000 followers on Twitter. And here's his proposal for peace with Ukraine. Russia and North Korea completely withdraw from all Ukrainian territory. Ukraine will not give 1 inch of its soil to Russia. Russia will release all prisoners and kidnapped individuals, and Russia will pay 100% of Ukraine's reconstruction. That got 32,000 likes, and that's absolutely insane. So it's reality versus fake reality. That's the fight. And I put my money on reality.
Yeah. Ultimately you have to.
But
do you think there is a opportunity, because there does seem to be something, you highlighted it a little bit there with the kind of infighting of the Democrats, and they're still doing some finger pointing and, who's going to charge out there and be the latest Obama or whatever. And I don't really think any of that is clear. So do you think Trump has the opportunity to, I don't want to say necessarily smash, but really damage the Democratic Party? Because there is nobody to answer back. Hakeem seems to think he's the latest incarnation of Obama, and AOC thinks he's not, wild enough. And, Bernie, wants to lecture us all about, how we should all be socialists. And I guess we have to decide which of his 14 houses we all want to move into. So it seems like
they're hurting right now. They're really hurting right now. So I think even more than, first off, I think in November, it did come pretty close. I think there was probably at least 1 or 2% nationally of fraud, and fraud is a big term, but it's small dollar donations smurfed through Act Blue kind of things, right. And, massive ballot harvesting and what I mean? So I don't think it was as close as it appeared, but I think they've lost a lot of power since then. Even they're scattered, disarrayed. The mainstream media has lost its punch. And that they're losing because Gavin Newsom is going to try and do long form content. And it's really tough to do that if it's inauthentic. And so I don't think it's going to succeed for them because authenticity has been their problem. But when they lose 18 to 39-year-olds, and I think those numbers are going to keep going up, to be honest with you. 60% of 18 to 39-year-olds approve of Trump. They don't approve of Trump strongly, but they approve of Trump. And that's all you need. And so what do the Democrats have that's in the cultural zeitgeist right now? conservatives have, a strong following of people that are just pro-Trump. They have Twitter. They have like an army of influencers that produce long-form content. They have, I think, the upper hand on YouTube. They have, young people don't care about, do they care about Jon Stewart anymore even? Like, do they care about John Oliver? They have Reddit. Like, that's literally all they have. And
I mean,
I don't know.
Even if you
like
look at, even if you look
really
at
good
the MSNBCs and the CNNs, I mean, they're laying people off, firing them, recontracting them, if even that much. And Washington Post, and that little,
and they're not cool.
No, and they're not cool. I mean, they've always been sort of the, that kind of that crowd in high school that thought they were cool. But when like the jocks came around, or like the good-looking girls came around, they kind of like shrunk back into the woodwork. They were kind of the big mouths, but they weren't really they weren't everything they thought they were. And watching Maddow now, I mean, I don't remember what the thing was she did like a week or two ago. Some crazy, she was dead wrong on the fact, and she kept pushing it. It was something with Doge or whatever. But people are like, "Whoa, you're just like an idiot." And is anybody really under 40 who is interested in getting married, and they believe in God, and they want a family, and they want some sort of secure paying job? Is any of that crowd watching them at all? I mean, ask Joy Reid. The answer is no.
They don't trust it. No, it's the worst combination for Democrats. They don't trust authority, and they get their news from independent online sources.
Yeah.
And so all this, and it's just crazy how fast. It's like, okay, well, you could probably draw a line 5 years ago and say that we might wind up here. But now it's like all of a sudden the lefties are calling for resistance, and they're like begging Chuck Schumer. Like, good luck with that. You know what I mean?
My nickname for him, Mark, is Grandpa Munster. Good Lord, he looks like Al Lewis from the Munsters.
Like everywhere you look, they have an authenticity problem. They really do.
Do you have any thoughts on how quiet Nancy Pelosi? I've heard almost nothing. She's not on really any of the Sunday morning, blitzkrieg that we usually used to see her on. And, she's on here or there, maybe kind of. But, I mean, she seems like she's just sort of fallen off the radar. And that's Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she's the heart and soul of every, she's like the Ted Kennedy of the, of the House. And, I mean, is she even there?
She's probably lying in a bed fighting for her life against sepsis right now. It's probably where she is. I don't know. It was funny for you to use the word fallen. I see what you did there. Oh man, this is this stuff too soon. Oh, well, I think a lot of them are quiet because it's like they can trace these financial flows. I think it's going to catch and touch anybody. And I go back and forth on this. One of the things I tried to do back in CPAC was get like an interview about how this is going to develop. And I heard things like, oh, they're expanding Gitmo for a reason. And then I heard, John Solomon told me this. He said, well, there's just too much. They're not going to be able to do this. Public opinion is not going to stand for it. There's too many people. It's going to catch everybody. So you're just going to have to settle with them resigning and have their security clearances revoked. And I think to some extent, public opinion is going to decide all of this. If public opinion, I think Trump has all the political capital he needs. He should just charge ahead. But at some point, if his approval gets in the 30s, like in my numbers, it's like, maybe America's just not ready. Or if I keep polling, like how many of these people should go to jail, and the answer is like all of them. We're gonna do a lot of that because I think that's ultimately who decides. It's still a democracy, and the 2026 election is going to figure this out. I think the Democrats are going to have problems, probably because some funding networks are going to get. I know that there's some bills right now about election integrity being worked on as well.
Yeah.
So what are they even going to run on?
Yeah, I mean, let's keep government big. I mean, that seems to me to be like kind of a flop of a video on social media. Yeah. But it is interesting. I'm going to step away just after this, but just take a quick break and come back. I want to get into your polls and all these other claims of the legacy dinosaur media that, Trump is tanking. Oh, it's awful. MAGA is dead. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, wow, you got there fast.
It's a lie.
Yeah, of course it is. But I do think there's a sense in the country that, they don't really have anything to campaign on. And it's true. Isn't this kind of what people voted for? Shrink government, accountability, transparency, get the illegals out, make the streets safe. I mean, all of this stuff. It's a weird dichotomy listening to them all cheering, them being the commies, cheering against all of this. What?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this post on Twitter I just read was like, that's World War III right there.
Yeah.
If you want this to happen, what this guy says, that's World War III. So are you going to run on World War III Democrats? Is that your plan? Good luck with that one. It's like, people are worried about their grocery prices. Now that you're going to tell them you're going to send their 18-year-olds off to like die in the European mud again, good luck with that. That's that's lights out.
Mark, I want to step aside for just one very quick second and then come back to you. But if you like what you're hearing here, how we talk about things, all the different things, please click on that donate button and help keep us afloat, because we rely 100% on you. We'll be right back.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 six-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed, because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
All right, welcome back. Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen. Mark, for the counter revolution is, I was actually kind of fun as I was like, yeah, this is a counter revolution. And then I heard, Victor Davis Hanson's like, yeah, it's the counter revolution. It's like, hey, there we go. I'm feeling vindicated. But, for that we saw it really developing. I mean, I think a wave was going on. And again, to your point, if you add in like another point or two because of fraud and manipulating numbers and the whole Democratic machinery doing its voting stuff, that crashed ashore on November 5th. And that's good, and that's where we are here, but voters need to stay plugged in. It's not just, hey, we won. No, you won the first quarter, second quarter, whatever analogy you want to use, but there's tons of propaganda now pouring out of the deep state. I mean, they are trying to find their footing. I don't think they've quite found it yet, but they're not laying on the mat anymore. And I want to put up a graphic here and then have you respond to it. It's from Mike Singleton of NBC Universal. He's like, he's like a decided Trump hater. But anyway, he puts this up and he says, Donald Trump has barely been back in the White House for a month, and it already appears that many MAGA voters and politicians are having buyer's remorse. Unfortunately, there's no return policy on the presidency. Trump's approvals have tanked, and he has the second lowest approval rating of any president at this point in their tenure since 1953. The lowest? Also Donald Trump. So then why did they vote him back into office? Maybe it was collective amnesia. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was an impulse to set the world on fire just for the sake of the spectacle. Maybe it was a combination of low turnout, post-COVID malaise, and a global trend toward anti-incumbency, if not anti-democracy. Whatever it was definitely a mistake. And he's quoted, of course, in the Daily Beast. Big shock there. Let's go through his claims. First of all, you, along with a couple of other folks, you're almost prophets when it comes to your polling. I don't want to quite put a halo on your head, but it's pretty darn close. Your numbers don't say anything like that, do they?
No. Like all psychological operations, there's a little bit of truth in there, sprinkled in with some disingenuous selected reporting and framing. where to unpack this. But first off, I think I saw that sentiment as well. I don't know if it was the same article, but I think that narrative they're citing actually came from focus groups. I think the focus groups were at the core of this particular exercise. And a focus group does not measure public opinion. It's just like 10 randos you got. That's not a sample. That's 10 people off the street. Now, it could help you maybe like fit a narrative to what you're seeing in the polling, but there was no effort or attempt to do that. Okay. First off, you said you put a halo of whatever. Polling's hard and it's impossible to be like 100% accurate. But I think where we shone is that in August, September, and October, we were the only ones that had Trump winning in the entire industry, basically. I mean, there were a few, but we put out numbers week after week, and everybody else was out in like Harris +5, Harris +6 land. And so their polls drift all over the place and are often just wrong. And it turns out that the more left you are is highly correlated with how bad of a case of USAID AIDS you got contracted. I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
But here's the facts right now. Donald Trump has a 50% approval rating. The highest it was in the last month and change was 55. I think it'll probably be around 51% plus or minus a couple points for the rest of his term unless something else major happens. 80% Republican approval rating of Trump, 59% strongly, 19% disapprove, which sounds high, but I have some free-thinking Republicans. This is based on self-ID, not like registration. And then 25% Dem approval rating of Trump, and the independents are roughly split. So here's the thing. Yes, Trump entered office with the lowest approval rating of any president in our history, but he's higher than Biden was at any point in time in like his first, his last 3.5 years. Biden never got higher than a 55 either. And even though Trump got more votes this time out, Trump's approval rating got up to 59% back in 2017. So why is that? It's because we're at political mutually assured destruction.
Right.
It's gone from kabuki, like Yankees versus Mets, to now the number one enemy, according to voters, is the Democrat Party facing America, then China, then the Republican Party, then Russia.
Well, I'm sorry.
Russia's not even in the top three.
Do that one more time. I don't know. I want you to blow over that. What are your numbers on that? And that's the number one enemy as far as Americans are concerned right now is the Democratic Party.
Yeah, that's why people should follow us. We're the only ones that really unpack like what's going on.
Well, I'm always tweeting your stuff, guys.
Angry.
That's insane. That's insane.
Yeah, let me give you a 1-2 punch here.
Sure.
So this is a question set we asked in. How likely is it that America will experience another civil war or revolution in the next few years?
Yeah.
And what is that? 43% say likely, 15% say very likely. That's the highest number at any time in our polling. So that number's been going up.
Yeah.
So that's like, economy is the number one issue. Economy is the number one issue. No, 40% of the country thinks we're going to be in a civil war. So that's new.
A couple of years ago, Mark, Gallup released a survey, and I cannot remember the other group also right now, but I did a report on that, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago probably, and was kind of shocked. I was like, whoa. And it was, I think Gallup's was 49%. Do you think there'll be a civil war within 5 years? I might be off a little bit on the percent. I don't know if it was 5 or 10 years, but I think it was 5. And then another group came along and the number was 47%, I believe. Your numbers make that even higher. That seems to me to indicate that the right, MAGA land, conservatives, whatever you want to call them, are waking up sort of even more and realize that the death struggle is on. The left has always known that. Their entire thing has been upend, overturn, blow everything up, destroy, whatever, welcome in, King Satan. But the right has always just been sort of like, yawning our way through it. Those are outstanding numbers. I mean, the Democratic Party.
Well, the numbers higher for Republicans. But the thing about Democrats is that it's become like the party of large ass disconnection from political realities, luxury beliefs. Yeah. And the reason that the Democrats think this, I've asked other questions to back this up, is that they think that MAGA people are violent insurrectionists. Imagine that. So they think MAGA is going to rise up. And the Republicans, I don't know, a lot of them probably think they need to themselves. But again, who's the biggest enemy America currently faces? And here's the list I put: Iran, China, Russia, Democrats, Republicans, or domestic extremists. And all U.S. likely voters, 30% Democrat Party. China comes in 2 at 20%.
Wow.
Republican Party comes in 3 at 16. Russia only gets 12. So, like
30%, 30% of Americans consider the Democratic Party the worst enemy of America. How do you even come back from that in the midterms? So, I mean, what do you do if you're the Democrats? I mean, those numbers should be scaring the living daylights out of them.
Including 20% of Democrats think the Democrat Party is the biggest enemy facing America, believe it or not.
Wow.
So, yeah, I don't know. 28% of independents say Democrats. Like, that's a really good question. If we looked at it by Biden approval, Biden's strong approvers, it's Republicans 37%, Russia 20%, China 10%, domestic extremists 14%. So Biden's strong disapprovers, people that hate Biden, 51% say Democrats, 26% say China. So it's rough. The point is, like, Russia,
Wow.
North Korea, Iran, nobody cares. The problem is in America. If you add up Republicans, Democrats, and domestic extremists, you're looking at 55%. So it's like the problem is at home. It's not Ukraine. It's.
I mean, it makes sense given that picture that those numbers produce. That you would say, you know, the sort of the second punch back would be civil war. You know, whether that happens or not, hopefully it doesn't happen. But it seems like to solidify that the Democratic Party is the number one enemy, is viewed by the plurality of American voters, according to your guys' numbers, your numbers. It seems from a political as well as justice, natural law, common sense kind of perspective that Trump really needs to serve up somebody's head on a platter that becomes the symbol of all of this. And I don't know, I think most people who are kind of in that camp might think that head needs to be Obama.
Maybe. I think he'd be selling a lot of people short if he put it all on one person is the problem. But you're right. It's like, who's bearing the ire right now? It's just like a GS-10 at the Parks and Recreations Department of, you know, the Fish and Game Commission or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, it's hard to be sympathetic for that person because they probably don't work very hard and they have like incredible job security that nobody in the private sector has.
Right.
But I think it's early. We're going to see some stuff. I don't know if I have a lot of confidence in Pam Bondi at this current point, but it comes back to the public opinion. We're going to ask the questions and see what people think about this. Mm-hmm. But let me just read the definition of the word revolution. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's a removal from power, a defeat or a downfall, rapid change in a political system. Like that defines what we're seeing now. And the only difference between a revolution and a civil war is literally just, well, how much are the Democrats going to resist it?
Right.
How much is Phil Murphy going to prevent ICE from coming in and taking away his legal aliens? How much is California going to resist Trump's legislation on voter ID? And we'll see. I don't know. It's like a game of chicken.
It is. Well, let me ask you if something like a Phil Murphy, because remember, like New Jersey, you know, narrowed to just a 5-point Democratic win with Harris and Trump in the election. Obviously still won it, got the electoral college votes and things, but people were kind of stunned at how close that became. I mean, 5 points, you know, Jersey's like 19, 25 point territory for the Democrats. If Tom Homan were to like kick down the governor's house front door, and they did a little perp walk like they did with Roger Stone for CNN, and they slap cuffs on him and take him out. Given the numbers you have in front of you right now from your own research, how do you think that would play? The governor of New Jersey getting handcuffed for protecting illegal immigrants, illegal aliens.
Well, I mean, we know Arizona New Jersey was closer than Arizona was this time, right? Basically. Or thereabouts. And so I know from Arizona polling and all the battleground polling that Voters overwhelmingly support mass deportation. In the swing states, we gave them the choice between 100% deportation and 100% amnesty candidate. And deportation, the number was 55 to 35.
Wow.
Vast majorities were in the military on the border, like in the low 60s, depending on the state. And it was weird. It's like up in Michigan, they care about it almost as much as in Arizona. So I think the numbers would hold up in New Jersey as well. We didn't poll it. But again, it's hard to predict, because what this might come down to is like, okay, well, like, what do the New Jersey state troopers do? Do they let that happen, or whoever, right? And then does that create optics? And do those optics, whose narrative do they feed into? And then how does it get covered? I wouldn't like Murphy's chances. I don't think he should be smacking the hornet's nest on this, because I don't think MSNBC's or NewJersey.com is going to be as effective running cover for him.
Right.
And now you're going to have Scott Pressler banging away at New Jersey for the next 4 years.
Right.
So, it's like, and then you're going to have a whole lot of young people who are following Joe Rogan and Elon Musk is going on and socializing everything that's being found. So like the entire political context has changed, and he's just doing this virtue signaling crap, this clown world virtue signaling crap. And I guess, I don't know why they don't change. They can't change. They want to keep the gravy train going. I really don't know.
That was exactly the question I was going to ask you. I mean, it seems to, what are adept politicians really good at? Putting their finger up and seeing which way the wind is blowing and reading the tea leaves and adjusting. And, Bill Clinton's famous, triangulation. It doesn't seem like, even if we got to lie through our teeth and make it seem like now we hate illegal aliens as much as everybody else. It doesn't look like any of that kind of thinking is going on. They're just like, screw it. They were just, up against the wall. Let's just go. It's like I'm kind of waiting. I've been following politics my entire career for 40 plus years. And I'm like, where's the, oh, that's a really sneaky thing they did. Well, here they are. This is their cover. I don't see anything like that. I'm just missing something, or is there really just nothing? These guys are just dyed in the wool. This is it. They're going to burn down the world if they have to. Better to reign over a kingdom of ashes than surrender the kingdom.
Well, it's like really weird. It's like AOC and Pete Buttigieg took pronouns out of their bios.
Yeah.
So they recognize that it's not culturally cool or politically expedient to do that anymore. And yet, like, the entire Democrat Party is still going to vote in bloc to allow men to compete in women's sports. So that's the problem. It comes back to, they just have this, it's cult-like behavior, but there's probably something nefarious going on behind the scenes. They went from, again, like being politically intelligent and shifting with public opinion, and like, sure, like Clinton shouldn't be derided for listening to voters and doing what they wanted, but they don't do that anymore. They literally have one operating modus operandi, and that is to clown world and then lie about it, gaslight people and obfuscate, and then try and run from their record like Kamala Harris did on Fox News. And it's crazy.
Yeah,
it makes no sense, and they'll still vote party line. So I can only assume that, listen, I've been spending time on Google Trends, and you coined counter revolution. I was the first person this time to start Googling things down in DC, what they're searching for, and the list is astounding. The number of things that are setting records down there, because you can see by region, like who's searching what.
Right.
And criminal defense lawyers has 8 to 10 times higher search volume in Washington, D.C. than it's ever had in all of Google's history. That's weird. Huh. And then the list of terms where all of a sudden you can see a spike just in the last month of people searching. It's like statute of limitations, extradition, immunity, treason, suicide hotline. It goes on and on and on. There's like 30 of them we found. Like just crazy things like therapy and lorazepam. So this is going over like a wrecking ball in DC. And I don't know if the Democrats are joined ranks to try and keep everybody on board. I'd have to imagine at some point people are going to start flipping. I don't know. But it would appear that there is criminality.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, I don't, you can't put down trillion, and this is just, with the budget, government expenditures. You can't put down trillions of misappropriations, I guess that's putting it politely, down to just government sloth. Somewhere in there, there's deliberateness, I mean, is the strategy from a sort of a prosecutorial, investigative standpoint, an FBI, Pam Bondi sort of thing, is let's get some of the lower middle tier players and threaten to destroy them if they don't flip, and then just start the dominoes flipping up. I mean, that seems to be the strategy every time anybody's being gone after, the big guy. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, our president, who follows the election integrity stuff very closely, closer than I, and he has a couple of connections of people formerly IC and then within this community of election integrity investigators, think that there's probably already people in multiple swing states that have flipped already and are probably, so I don't know to whom in what investigation, but they think that it's coming.
With regard
again,
specifically to the elections, the statewide elections.
Yeah.
From 2020?
2020. Yeah. So I don't know.
Long maintained
what to do with that.
The record
piece of
has to be
information.
set straight on 2020. I've long maintained that. You can't just let that slide. It can't be done, because it really was sort of the core of the takeover and the whole bit and everything that went on before it, and COVID and Wuhan and Fauci and all of it. Joe Biden didn't issue pardons.
We've asked that question like 12 times, I think, nationally. We asked how likely is it that cheating affected the outcome of the 2020 election? We've asked it like 12 times. Yeah. And the number's always been between 49 and 66%, and the number's gone up steadily, not down, up. So the gaslighting didn't work. It was like Streisand effect. And that's horrible. Two out of three voters thinking the outcome of a presidential election was affected by cheating. We even had 49% of people say agree with that there's no way that Joe Biden got 81 million votes. Like, we polled that when that song came out.
Sure.
Half of America, more Americans than voted for Kamala Harris, agree that there's no way that Joe Biden got 81 million votes. So, yeah, like, they want this. And it's the same thing with COVID, early on, like, I think it was early 22. We had like 68, I think the number was 68% of Americans agreeing that COVID was likely leaked from the Wuhan laboratory. And then they tried to lie about it for another year and a half. It's just crazy. Like, every single thing they saw through it. Clown world.
Yeah, there is a, I mean, going back to sort of the whole religious, theological, philosophical, human nature part of us. Yes, we're fallen, but we also still have some resemblance to the image and likeness of God that we're all made in, God's truth. And here you are, and something just doesn't sit right. The average, American, the average normie just doesn't have time to stick their faces into this, 20 hours a day. But, just so much of it just isn't passing the smell test.
Yeah.
But because people are kind of ignorant about the details, that's what had been the mainstream media's sort of their ticket to the dance, that most people didn't know enough to have a prolonged, intelligent conversation about something to fend off their lies. That's not the case anymore.
Yeah. I think the right learned a lot about misinformation over the period of the post-2020 era, where, let's face it, probably during Trump 1, there was some misinformation passed around. And then there was definitely some wacky stuff that was, I think the right got really good at parsing information and treating it and searching for the truth, let's just say, and not going out there and saying things that they haven't personally come to, an understanding of what the truth is. Yeah. But like that guy on Twitter, he's out there advocating for World War III to virtue signal, and it's a lie. Like, there's no chance that'll ever happen in reality. And so lies are evil. They're a sin. If you're going to lie, sin for virtue signaling, like, that's evil.
Sure.
And people got to wake up and understand that. And it's like they think they're fighting the man. And it's like, no, if you're lying to fight somebody, you're the problem. And I think just more people need to be aware of that and unfortunately, the only way I have personally of helping them along is to make fun of them mercilessly.
You're excellent at that.
Like, give me another option, right? Like, that's it. And so it's what I try to do on Twitter.
Yeah,
but,
you're awesome. I love your stuff. Every time I'm like, yeah, go Mark.
The algorithm has determined that I basically just like to interact with all the people that went to that Principles First conference that, Bill Kristol and all those guys were at.
Right,
so
we're wrapping up. We've got a little bit of time left here, but I do want to ask you, do you think that there is, I'm going to have you put your prophet hat on again, your halo on again. 2026 midterms. How do you see those with the information you have today? Obviously, any black swan events could happen, and whatever. But what you have sitting in front of you today, what do you see as the most likely or more likely outcome of those midterms?
I haven't pulled generic ballot since the election, but it's probably unchanged. It's probably about Republican +3. I think there's going to be a change in the electorate. I think Republicans might pick up a point or two, and just that alone will bring Republicans up to +4, +5. But then with all the electioneering and stuff, that probably won't be much of a pickup, but it would be a Republican pickup. That's, of course, assuming that there's not a major economic collapse. I think if, we have like a quarter of a recession here or there, I don't think it'll be a major problem, because I think people like what they're seeing. We didn't talk about this, but right direction of the country got to 48% last week, which is by far the highest in our record. So, there have been stock market hiccups since Trump was inaugurated. I don't think people are really watching that so much.
Yeah.
And most of the people answering based on their portfolio, I think are probably already like MSNBC watchers or into the luxury belief column largely. So I think that's the outcome, which means Trump maintains control. And I think the Senate's looking pretty bad for Democrats this time out too. But then it's like, okay, maybe something really bad from an optics perspective happens with Ukraine. Maybe we get sort of depression level economic dislocation. Maybe there's a major like terrorist attack. Like, I don't know. Like, there are plenty of black swans that could come up.
Right.
But I think the most likely black swan is that all of a sudden Democrats lose their, decades long superiority in small dollar donations. And then all of a sudden have a very poor ground game out of nowhere. That's probably the most likely black swan, in my opinion. And I think I know of 2 election integrity bills being worked on right now.
Yeah, that's the you got to choke off the supply, and I've said it years ago. I was on the desk reporting the 2020 election coverage night live, and I saw all of those states stop counting, and got a horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. I'm like, whoa! I've been on that I think was the 10th or the 11th. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was the 10th election night coverage. I had been on a set, never seen reporting live, never seen anything like that, and I just don't.
They did that again this time.
Yeah.
I think they tried. There was a period where it came down to the Rust Belt. Kamala Harris had to sweep the Rust Belt, and there was about an hour where no results came in. And Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Michigan, like all had really low percentages reported. And I had that same feeling. And, that everybody cut to like, oh, Kamala Harris sent her staffers home. Oh, here's a view at Mar-a-Lago and all hell's breaking loose. Oh, here's Shapiro giving a speech about how hard it is to count votes. It's so hard. It's going to take us all night. And I'm looking and I'm like, oh, but Madison County's 95% report, or Dane County, Madison, Wisconsin, 95% reporting. Somebody screwed up. Yeah. And it's like the counting started again about an hour and a half later. And I just think they couldn't pull it off.
Yeah. Probably a too big to rig situation. Seriously. They managed to, narrow the house a bit. Last question on this front, strategies. As you look into 2026, And of course, there's the gerrymandering stuff going on and the vote in the the Wisconsin Supreme Court seat, and what could they do? And that might flip a seat or two, but whatever. But where would you, looking kind of across the spectrum, the political spectrum, where are the most important seats that either need to be held on to by Trump, the party, or taken back from the Democrats? If you had maybe a half a dozen of those, where would you sort of locate them on the map?
I haven't run the map again. I'm pretty sure whoever's in the swing state for Senate, we can't have a repeat of what happened last time.
Right.
But my eye is on California and between now and then, because I think that's where a lot of the hijinks are with motor voter.
Right.
I have a contact, Seth Keschel, that says just from the 2020 census alone, Republicans have had 16 House seats stolen from them.
Yeah.
In California, there could be 4, 5, 6 million illegal aliens voting in federal elections. And we just don't know. And that's like many House seats. And then the other, I think, thing to watch is what happens to NRCC and RNC leadership, because what's new is that it's like they had like Michael Steele and Ronna McDaniel, and they're all establishment people taking USAID money, most likely, maintaining the status quo, which is like, hey, we're organizations that exist to perpetuate like vendor relationships, basically, right?
Sure.
It's like, my buddy's getting that cushy direct mail print deal this year, just like he did last year.
Exactly.
And I hope with Whatley, we're going to see something different. He hasn't been there that long, and they probably could have done better this election. But again, he was only there for 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And then the NRCC, I think, who does a lot of work distributing the money and picking who's going to run and working through the primary situations.
Yeah.
There's a lot of establishment people all over the country in these districts that have been in power and tend to stay in power, are very cozy with the local Democrats. And they, I've heard stories personally of MAGA candidates that have just gone in and the systems spin them up and chew them up and spin them out. So I don't know. It's tough to predict the House outcome with polling.
Yeah,
definitely Senate will be easier. But also I think we'll have a really good idea where this is going based on what happens with like New Jersey.
Sure. I think a race to keep an eye on is that April 1st Wisconsin Supreme Court seat. I mean, that's
there you go.
That's not just the effect of it, but it's also what does it say. And there does seem to be a major push in MAGA land to make sure that seat goes back to a Republican justice or judge. So we'll see. A lot of stuff. Mark,
yeah,
you rock, man. Thanks again for coming. I love talking with you. Honestly, it's fantastic. Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, we covered a lot. It's great. Love coming here.
It's great. All right. Thanks again, man. We'll have you back on. Just probably the next time I'm like, hey, I want to have Mark back on.
All right, sweet.
All right. God
bless. Next time I tweet something inflammatory, probably.
Well, it means we'll have you on tomorrow. All right. Appreciate it, brother. Thank you. That's it, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Coming to you from Houston, Texas. Yeehaw. I'm Gary Michael Voris. God love you.